Think about the woods. You might never come back again, and even if you do, you ain't gonna return the same.
Early morning in the Shenandoah National Park. Ethan Winter and Jeannie Seipel are still rubbing the sleep out of their eyes when they learn about the murders.
That doesn't happen in national parks at all, really, does it? I mean, that's extraordinary.
Julianne Williams and Lollie Winans' throats were cut along this trail. The FBI and National Park Service are investigating, but they're not talking.
Finally, the 1996 murders of Julie Williams, 24, and Lollie Winans, 26, is solved. I've wondered about when this case was going to be solved for years. The man convicted of their murders, Walter Leo Jackson, had a lengthy criminal history, including kidnapping and assaults. Also, what is the connection between this case and the Rex HEUERMANN Long Island serial killer case? Come with me as we find out. We're going to discuss the murders of Julie and Lollie and what that connection may be. Right here in my Murder She Shed. Join me and Simon here weekly for rarely discussed true crime cases. Make sure you smash that subscribe button in order to find me and Simon in this big YouTube world. A girl and her dog can get lost in here. I actually did first record this video as I was walking through the woods because of the fact that Lollie and Julie love nature, but it became a chaotic mess as the rest of my life, and so I decided it was better not to do that. He was being a naughty boy while we were walking. What's new? And here we are, still being naughty, right? All right, let's begin. 26-year-old Laura Winans, known as Lollie to those that loved her, was just one semester away in a degree for outdoor leadership. She was confident and protective of those she loved. Lollie had been through a lot in her short life. After Lollie's mom and dad were divorced, her mother actually remarried to a man that began essaying Lollie. When Lollie told her mother, just like a lot of mothers, she didn't believe Lollie, which I think's a shame, but it happens more often than you would think. The mother just don't want to accept that that could be true. Lollie would do everything possible to escape her home to get away from this man. She would go to any camp available for the summer. This is how she grew her love for the outdoors. She also sent away for boarding school brochures and lobbied her mother to let her attend. It worked, and she started Garrison Forest School in Baltimore. Actually, Lollie's family was very wealthy, but they didn't share the wealth because actually Lollie paid for most things herself. She had to get extra jobs as a young person and pay for most things herself. After attending college, she decided her new passion was leading SA survivors like herself on wilderness expeditions as part of her healing process. She brought her golden retriever mix Taj with her on all these expeditions and every hike she went on. 24-year-old Julie Williams had already traveled the world. She was quiet but big-hearted. She came from a middle-class family and had a happy home life. She was raised Catholic and loved to volunteer for missions. Julie had plans to become a geologist. She loved nature as well. The couple had met while working at a world-renowned outdoor program for women. The girls were different in many ways, but they both had a love for hiking and they were experienced backpackers. They were excited about the summer, buying their first home together and spending the summer backpacking. So on Sunday, May 19th, 1996, Julie and Lollie embarked on a backpacking trip in Shenandoah National Park with their golden retriever, Taj. On Wednesday, May 22nd, Julie and Lollie were seen renewing their park permits at the Thornton Gap entrance station. They told the staff at Thornton Gap that they intended to stay in the central district of the park. Julie and Lollie also told the attendant they planned on leaving the park May the 27th. When Julie missed work, her family became worried because that wasn't like her at all. On May 31st, 1996, Thomas Williams, Julie's father, reported his daughter missing. Park rangers started a search and located Julie and Lollie's car just north of Skyland Lodge. On June 1st, the couple had been hiking up the White Oak Canyon Trail when a golden retriever came running out of the woods to greet them. The dog seemed dazed and confused, as if she were looking for her master. The couple had the pup follow them to the parking lot, where they let a game ranger know they had found a dog with no collar on. The ranger whistled for the dog, who came right over. He motioned for the dog to hop into the truck, but the dog didn't budge. The ranger tried coaxing her, but that failed too. He called the dog again, this time using the name he had heard at the briefing earlier in the day. "Hop in, Todd," he said. He now knew it was the missing hiker's dog. Search efforts were redirected to the location where Taj had been found. At 8:40 p.m., 2 rangers were searching for the missing girl's dog down Bridle Trail when they happened to see a tent near a stream. The sun was starting to set as they approached the tent. It didn't take them long to realize something was really wrong. The tent's rear rain fly had been cut or torn open, leaving wide, angry gashes in the nylon. A leash and empty dog collar, both with cut marks, were lashed to a fallen limb. Just outside the tent, 3 hiking boots lay on their sides, their laces tangled on the ground. A Ziploc bag of macaroni was spilled out all over the ground. A roll of toilet paper, flattened and saturated with blood, was nearby. There was overturned dog dishes, a jar of Italian spices also on its side. Then the smell hit them as they neared the entrance of the tent. Where the fly of the tent had been slashed, they could see a slashed up sleeping bag with goose down feathers everywhere. When they lifted up a tiny portion of the bag, there lay the undeniable shape of a human head face down, its hair matted with blood. As the rangers were radioing in their discovery to police, they noticed about 60 feet away and down the stream's short embankment another body, also bundled in a sleeping bag. The state police investigators arrived at Shenandoah National Park not long after midnight. They were joined at 2 a.m. by several FBI agents. Using their flashlight, the investigators attempted to assess the scene. They pulled back the crown of both sleeping bags and observed that the women had been gagged. They made notes of the fatal wounds on both necks. They then inventoried the backpacks, removing the contents as they jotted down each item. They took a few Polaroids and then made the decision not to process the rest of the crime scene until daylight. On June 2nd, investigators returned to the crime scene. There they began relaying the bodies of both women, still in their sleeping bags, atop a bright blue tarp. Then they unzipped the bags. The on-site state police crime lab technician recorded what appeared to be small contusions on the women's arms, chest, and face. He made notes of the 2 gags, both apparently fashioned from the women's long underwear. Duct tape had been wound tightly around both women's wrists, binding their arms behind their backs. Lollie's ankles were also bound with what appeared to be a 3rd piece of long underwear belonging to the women. The technician also observed no obvious signs of decomp. Investigators took photos of the women, and then they decided they should call their family. Their family was told they'd been found deceased. There was no obvious signs of sexual trauma. However, both women had what the examiner described as an oily substance in and around their areas, and the residue was too thick to be a lubricant, and so she recommended samples be sent out for further testing. She also noted the presence of multiple abrasions and contusions on the face, neck, chest, and back of both women. Both women had long, deep gashes in their necks, enough to cleave their tracheas, carotid arteries, and jugular veins. Julie's wounds was larger and deeper than Lollie's, but both were clearly the cause of their deaths. The duct tape used to bind Julie and Lollie was actually a highly specialized and hard-to-find size, 1.5 inches in width, where the normal size is 1.88 inches. It was actually something that wasn't sold just in every hardware store at the time. A small pair of gloves were found at the crime scene that didn't appear to be the girls. Also found sitting centered on a canvas bag was a Officers agreed it seemed deliberately placed. Investigators believed whoever killed the girls had killed other women in the past. Through the years, there had been 2 other suspects to the girls' murders, but neither was actually proven to be the killers. The Richmond FBI office began taking a fresh look at the case in 2021. Investigators combed through everything in the case file, re-examining evidence, photos, and interviews. Considering advancements in DNA technology, the team spent countless hours determining what pieces of evidence could actually be retested and have DNA on them. DNA was found on the duct tape used to bind the girls, and it was uploaded into CODIS, the national database run by the FBI containing DNA profiles of known offenders, and it yielded a match to Walter Leo Jackson Sr. with a 1 out of 2.6 trillion chance that it would be anybody else but Jackson. So it was no doubt in their mind that Jackson was the girl's killer. There was no doubt in their mind after 28 years their killer had been found through DNA. Walter Leo Jackson, Sr. of Cleveland, Ohio, was a residential painter and avid hiker who often visits Shenandoah National Park. He was known to use temporary tags and alter the license plates of vehicles, which he frequently swapped out into, different vehicles all the time. Also, it makes sense that he was a painter and he used that kind of duct tape, because how many times have I seen when they redid my house them use the small skinny duct tape when they covered the trim when they went to paint? So the duct tape actually makes perfect sense. The new forensic testing also revealed evidence that the women had been essayed, which had not been a conclusive find in the past. Authorities said Jackson violently attacked at least 3 other women and was in and out of prison on various charges in the years leading up to and after the Shenandoah killings. Just days after Julie and Lollie's bodies were discovered in Virginia, Jackson was back in Ohio, where he kidnapped a woman with a knife to her throat and raped her. About a month later, he broke into a Cleveland area home and raped another woman. However, Jackson was never identified as a suspect in those 2 attacks and remained at large. Finally, in 2011, Jackson was arrested after police said he picked up an 18-year-old woman in Cleveland in his 1979 Ford van, abducted her and raped her before she escaped, still bound, gagged, and naked. He pled guilty to several charges in that case, and while serving his sentence, he was forensically linked to those earlier 1996 assaults in the Cleveland area. Investigators are now piecing together Jackson's past and seeking any information from the public that could potentially link him to other crimes. This is where I did some research on past murders that could actually be linked to Jackson. Investigators said Lollie and Julie's murders were not this guy's first time killing. Only 3 months prior and about an hour away from where Lollie and Julie were murdered, 25-year-old Alicia Showalter Reynolds was murdered. On March 2nd, 1996, Alicia was driving to meet her mom in Charlottesville, Virginia, and they were going to pick up a dress for her brother's upcoming wedding. She never made it to meet her mom. Alicia's car was discovered that evening abandoned on the shoulder of Route 29 in Culpeper, Virginia, with a white napkin under a windshield wiper. This was traditionally an indicator that someone had had car trouble. Investigators said that this same guy had tried the car trouble ruse on other women in the weeks leading up to Alicia's disappearance. The troopers noted several cigarette butts and a pair of black gloves lying next to the vehicle. They knocked on the door of a few nearby houses. Several residents there said the same thing. The driver of the Tracer, a young-looking brunette girl, appeared to have been having car trouble, and then they saw a clean-cut man, probably in his mid-30s, wearing flannel shirt and jeans, pull over to help her out. She climbed into his truck, and they both left the scene. Later that day, a local police officer found one of Alicia's credit cards laying on the side of the road back in the town center of Culpeper. 2 days later, a woman discovered that Alicia's size 2 jacket laying in the mud near a remote pond about 10 miles away. As news of Alicia's disappearance spread, women, 20 in all, started coming forward. Their stories were disturbingly similar, all about a clean-cut Caucasian man, 35 to 40 years old, who would just pull up alongside these women, frantically waving and motioning for the women to pull over. On May 6th, Alicia's body was found by a logger in an area that had been previously logged. He noticed vultures swarming near the river. He walked over and found Alicia's partially buried body. This man that murdered Alicia became known as the Route 29 killer, although he remains unidentified. However, a sketch was drawn up from these women who had been harassed by this man. So this leads us to last year when Rex HEUERMANN was discovered to be the alleged Long Island serial killer. Alicia's brother and sister came forward believing that he could be Alicia's killer. They pointed out that Rex HEUERMANN's mother, Dolores, had actually relocated near Culpeper in 1994. So it's a little south of Culpeper, where Alicia disappeared. And they believe the sketch drawn up of the Route 29 killer looked very similar to Rex. But Check out this sketch compared to our killer Jackson and see how similar that looks. And decide what you think about that. Because to me, when I looked at this, I found this very similar to what Jackson looked like when he was possibly younger. Alicia was murdered only 3 months prior and near the same area as Lollie and Julie. Could Walter Leo Jackson Sr. be the Route 29 killer? Alicia was a student in her 20s, just like Lollie and Julie, whereas Rex victims were all prostitutes. These 3 women were young students, getting an education, in their 20s, and just not the typical Rex victim. He often called prostitutes to his house, and that's how he killed them. So I really don't believe Rex is Alicia's killer. I believe that from the sketch and everything, the area, the time, the date, that this guy, Jackson, could actually be Alicia's killer. Also, 20-year-old Ann Carolyn McDaniel went missing near Culpeper, Virginia in September of 1996. Her body was found within 10 miles from where Alicia's body was found. Could Jackson be a serial killer and many more deaths linked to this man? If he is, he will never be charged as he died in prison 6 years ago. But I wouldn't doubt if many more murders are linked to this man because he didn't start out being able to hide evidence so well just when he killed Lollie and Julie. I believe that this man had started out probably several years before then. There may be women in Ohio where he used to live that could be, his victim. So on this brochure was the time periods where Jackson was actually out of prison. And I'm sure in between those time periods, he has many victims. And I bet it won't be too long in the future before they're going to match this guy's DNA to several other victims. And I would almost bet all my money, which I'm not because you can't have it. I don't have anything really. But anyway, that Alicia is one of his victims. And you are no longer being nice, so I'm just going to have to say bye. Maybe you can... I'm trying to say something. Maybe you can research this a little bit yourself. You might can find other victims out there that could be, unfortunately, ran into Jackson. But it's sad that at least the family knows on Lollie and Julie, but it's sad that there can never really be any punishment for this man, although it could be in hell, and that's a pretty good punishment. All right, tell them bye. Tell them you love them. And tell them you just been ornery today. Just been ornery today. What's new? What's new? What's new? Give me 5. Give me 5. Give me high 5. Give me high 5.
Well, I've been